There's a truth about attraction that most men never discover. A truth hidden beneath the surface of conversations, compliments, first dates, and long nights wondering what went wrong. It's the reality that women are not moved by logic, persuasion, or effort. They are moved by emotion, by instinct, by something deeper than what can be spoken. And once a man understands the emotional triggers wired into female psychology, something shifts. He stops chasing and women begin chasing him. Not because he became richer, better looking, or more charming, but because he learned to command the one thing that changes everything, his emotional state. Most men spend their lives believing attraction is earned through performance. Be nice enough, be impressive enough, be available enough. But the harder they try, the faster the spark dies. They become predictable, readable, and emotionally exposed, and in that exposure, desire collapses. Women don't lose interest because men are unworthy. They lose interest because nothing in the interaction creates tension, mystery, or emotional pull. The man becomes obvious, and obvious never creates attraction. But when a man learns emotional control, when he carries himself with calm certainty rather than eagerness, when he speaks less and means more, something powerful happens. Women feel him instead of analyzing him. They respond without knowing why. They lean in, they invest, they chase. Because what draws them isn't what he says. It's what he doesn't need to say. Before any technique, before any strategy, before any so-called game, there is a foundational truth. The real power in attraction comes from within. It's not about manipulating her emotions. It's about mastering your own. When a man becomes grounded, when he stops seeking validation, when he no longer needs approval to feel worthy, the entire dynamic reverses. Women sense it instantly. A man who doesn't need her becomes a man she can feel drawn to. A man who is self-contained becomes a man she can feel pulled toward. And a man who isn't emotionally shaken by attention or rejection becomes the one she can't stop thinking about. You've seen it in real life. A guy walks into a room. He's not the tallest, not the most handsome, not the loudest. But somehow women notice him. They glance. They pay attention without meaning to. They feel his presence. That presence is not about appearance. It is masculine energy paired with emotional discipline. It is the quiet signal that he does not chase, perform, or plead. He simply exists with certainty. And that stillness creates curiosity. Curiosity becomes intrigue. Intrigue becomes desire. Here's the part most men never learn. When you express too much, when you explain too much, when you talk too much, you kill attraction. Not because communication is wrong, but because predictability removes tension. And tension is the heart of attraction. Women are not drawn to what they fully understand. They are drawn to what they cannot quite grasp. Uncertainty activates imagination, and imagination builds attachment. When she wonders what you're thinking, why you're not chasing, or why she can't read you, she becomes emotionally invested. Not through effort, but through absence. Strategic silence is not coldness, it is space. And space gives meaning to your presence. When a man gives less emotional disclosure, a woman gives more emotional pursuit. This isn't manipulation, it's psychology. A woman's desire is not controlled by her logic, but by what she feels in the presence of a man who remains calm, grounded, and internally directed. When she senses he is not performing, not proving, and not seeking, he becomes rare. And rarity creates value. It's the contrast that pulls her in. Her emotional movement against his emotional stillness. Her uncertainty against his inner solidity. Her storm against his anchored calm. She doesn't consciously choose it. She feels it. And that feeling becomes the beginning of attraction. There's a story that illustrates this shift. Matt was an ordinary man. He wasn't a dominant personality. He wasn't the life of the room. He worked a decent job, lived a quiet life, and for years watched women choose louder, flashier, more exciting men. Every time he became interested in someone, it slipped away. He tried harder. He became more available. He expressed more. And the more he offered, the faster the connection dissolved. Then something changed. Matt stopped trying to win women over. He stopped chasing attention. He stopped explaining himself. Instead, he focused on building himself. He studied Stoic philosophy. He practiced emotional detachment. He learned to sit with discomfort instead of reacting. Slowly, his energy shifted. Women began approaching him. One woman eventually admitted she couldn't stop thinking about him because his calmness made her feel off balance. She felt something she couldn't define. That wasn't luck. It was behavioral dominance born from inner control. Any man can develop that same presence. It begins with something simple but uncomfortable, going 72 hours without explaining yourself unnecessarily. No defending, no oversharing, no filling silence. Just letting your actions speak. This reveals how conditioned most men are to seek approval. The moment you resist the urge to justify yourself, everything shifts. People respond differently. You walk differently. You feel different. You are no longer reacting. You are directing. That is the beginning of the masculine frame. Women do not fall for what is obvious. They fall for what is felt but not fully understood. When a man stops broadcasting every emotion, when he maintains just enough of himself, he becomes a puzzle, and puzzles are compelling. A man who reveals everything is consumed and discarded. A man who reveals selectively becomes unforgettable. She doesn't want full access to your inner world. She wants the experience of earning entry into it. That is what creates attachment. But how does a man create that emotional pull without pretending, performing, or playing games? The answer is emotional leverage. You don't manipulate, you lead. You stay calm when she becomes emotional. You remain clear when she becomes uncertain. You respond, but you do not react. This gives her a feeling of safety wrapped in mystery. It's the paradox that draws her in. She feels understood, yet she can't fully read you. She feels connected, yet she still reaches for more. That tension is the hook. And it works because feelings, not logic, shape attraction. Most men think attraction is built through effort, gestures, pursuit, and expression. But real attraction is built in the spaces between actions. In the pauses, in the timing, in the moments left lingering, when you don't rush to reply, when you don't rush to fill silence, when you don't smooth the edges of discomfort. That unpredictability builds obsession. One day you're fully present. The next day you're absorbed in your mission, not as a tactic, but as a lifestyle. Women feel that. They respect it. And it drives them a little wild in the best way. This is the beginning of emotional intensity. Not through grand drama, but through contrast, presence and absence, warmth and restraint, connection and independence. It creates movement inside her, and movement becomes desire. Most men never realize that attraction rises and falls based on who holds emotional control. The moment a woman can predict your reactions, measure your eagerness, and sense your dependence, the dynamic shifts. She no longer feels tension. She no longer feels curiosity. She no longer feels the pull. Attraction doesn't disappear because interest fades. It disappears because the emotional rhythm goes flat. A man who is always available, always expressive, always responsive creates no psychological movement. And without movement, there is no desire. Emotional detachment changes this. It doesn't mean shutting down or acting cold. It means refusing to hand over your identity to someone else's approval. It means you feel emotion without letting it dictate your behavior. It means you can care without collapsing. This is the type of inner strength women feel immediately. They sense it in your tone, in your timing, in your calmness under pressure. A man who remains centered becomes a man she cannot sway. And that stability becomes irresistibly attractive. She doesn't want to control you. She wants to feel your solidity. She wants to sense that you won't fall apart when she becomes emotional. She wants the experience of leaning into a man who doesn't wobble. When she feels that, something deep inside her awakens. Safety and desire merge, and that fusion is rare. Most men either react or withdraw. Few remain steady. The man who stays steady becomes unforgettable. This is why women test. Not consciously, not maliciously, but instinctively. She needs to know whether the man in front of her is governed by insecurity or grounded in self-respect. The test may show up as silence, sarcasm, mood swings, emotional distance, or sudden shifts in warmth. Most men panic. They chase. They explain. They plead. And in doing so, they fail the test. But the man who stays calm, who doesn't overcorrect, who doesn't lose his center, passes without saying a word. His response says everything. It tells her he can carry emotional weight. It tells her he won't crumble. It tells her he is a man she can feel attracted to. This is behavioral dominance. Not dominance over her, but dominance over oneself. A man who commands himself commands the dynamic. His presence shapes the interaction more than his words ever could. He walks slower. He talks less. He chooses when to engage and when to let silence do the work. And because he is not performing, his energy carries weight. His presence fills the space without effort. Women feel this on a visceral level. They lean in, sometimes without realizing it. Here's a simple exercise that reveals how powerful this shift can be. Spend a full day saying nothing about yourself, unless asked directly. No self-promotion, no volunteering details, no filling space to be liked. Just exist. Watch what happens. People, especially women, begin to pull information from you. They ask more questions. They become more attentive. They lean into the silence because they want to feel what's underneath it. This is the masculine frame. The less you push, the more they pull. Women are drawn to men who don't chase validation because it signals something essential: self-sufficiency. A man who doesn't need attention becomes a man whose attention feels valuable. And what is valuable becomes desired. When a woman senses that your time, your focus, and your energy are not freely given, she begins to earn them. She invests. She adjusts. She pays attention. You don't force it. She chooses it. Think back to the moments in your life when you felt the strongest attraction to someone. It wasn't because they poured out their emotions or explained themselves endlessly. It was because you couldn't quite figure them out. Because they made you feel something you couldn't fully name. Because there was a question mark in your mind. That's the mystery factor. It's not about hiding who you are. It's about revealing yourself at a pace that maintains tension. It's about giving just enough for her to feel, but not enough for her to fully decode. Attraction thrives in contrast, warmth followed by space, presence followed by absence, engagement followed by independence. These moments create rhythm, and rhythm creates emotional imprinting. Her mind begins to replay interactions. Her thoughts drift back to you without permission. She wonders what you meant, what you're thinking, why she can't quite read you. This is not manipulation. This is human psychology responding to tension, curiosity, and emotional pacing. Most men destroy this rhythm because they fear losing connection. They rush to reassure. They rush to express. They rush to secure what they feel slipping. But insecurity is the very thing that pushes attraction away. A woman doesn't lose interest because she wants distance. She loses interest because he cannot hold space. The man who collapses under uncertainty becomes forgettable. The man who remains calm becomes magnetic. One of the most powerful practices a man can adopt is controlled withdrawal. Not disappearing, not punishing, simply stepping back enough to let silence stretch. Once a week, remove yourself from her digital world. No instant replies. No constant presence. No need to be seen. Let your absence create contrast. Let the space speak. Two things will happen. Her true level of interest will reveal itself, and your emotional leverage will grow. The man who stays grounded during this process becomes impossible to replace. Something changes in the way she thinks about him. She goes from liking him to needing to understand him. She goes from casual interest to emotional investment. She goes from observing him to searching for him. That shift is profound, and it comes from emotional independence, not strategy. Women don't fall for explanations. They fall for energy. They listen to tone more than words, timing more than meaning, presence more than language. A man who is calm, composed, and connected to his own purpose speaks louder without speaking at all. His silence has weight. His stillness has gravity. His life has direction. And women are drawn to that because emotional polarity pulls them toward depth. This polarity is at the core of lasting desire. She is movement. You are grounding. She is emotion. You are depth. She is flow. You are structure. When these forces meet, attraction ignites. But when a man abandons his own center to chase hers, the polarity collapses. The dynamic becomes flat. The desire fades. Not because she stopped caring, but because he stopped being the anchor. A man must build a world that does not revolve around a woman, a mission that precedes her, a purpose that continues with or without her. When a woman senses that a man has direction, that his identity is not shaped by her reactions, she orbits him. When she senses that he needs her to feel complete, she drifts. This is not philosophy. It is behavior, and behavior shapes attraction more than words ever will. A man who holds himself to a personal code becomes rare, not a list of values he recites, but principles he lives. He guards his time. He chooses his company. He speaks with intention. He moves with clarity. His boundaries are not walls. They are standards. Standards that communicate self-worth without saying a word. Women adjust to those standards because they feel them. A man like this doesn't force respect. He evokes it. One of the most transformative skills a man can practice is the ability to say no without justification. No to late-night attention. No to emotional chaos. No to anything that violates his peace. The moment you stop giving away access freely, your value rises. Not because you withhold, but because you protect what matters. A woman feels this, and it activates something primal inside her. She steps toward what she cannot easily claim. She invests in what she cannot automatically possess. Attraction requires mystery, but not confusion. It requires depth, but not emotional distance. It requires strength, but not hardness. It requires range, the ability to be warm without losing composure, curious without becoming needy, present without becoming dependent. This range is what keeps a woman emotionally engaged long after the moment has passed. It gives her something to feel, something to chase, something to wonder about. The mystery factor does not make a man manipulative. It makes him memorable. Women remember the men they could not fully understand, the men who made them feel without explaining everything, the men who revealed themselves slowly, with control and intention. There is a moment in every man's life when he realizes that chasing love, approval, or validation has never brought him what he wanted. He looks back at the times he overgave, overexplained, or overcommitted, and he sees the same result repeating. The more he tried to secure connection, the more it slipped away. The more he tried to impress, the less impressive he became. The more he tried to be chosen, the more forgettable he felt. And beneath that realization is an uncomfortable truth: attraction cannot be earned through effort. It can only grow in the presence of self-possession. A woman feels a man's center long before she understands his personality. She senses whether he belongs to himself or whether he's waiting for her to define him. If he waits for her approval, she loses interest. If he stands in his own identity, she becomes drawn in. It's not arrogance, it's rootedness. It's the signal that his value does not fluctuate based on attention. And that steadiness becomes the quiet force that pulls her closer. This is why emotional independence matters more than charm, looks, or status. A man who remains whole in the face of desire becomes the kind of man a woman cannot easily walk away from. Not because he traps her, but because he awakens something she doesn't feel often: a sense of gravity, a sense of depth, a sense of entering the presence of someone who doesn't bend in order to be liked. When a man stops handing over his emotional state to the reactions of a woman, he becomes powerful in a way he can feel. His thoughts slow down, his body relaxes, his voice steadies, his choices sharpen. He no longer performs. He no longer negotiates with insecurity. He no longer fears silence, distance, or uncertainty. He welcomes them, because he understands that attraction grows in the space where he does not chase. There is a word for this shift: containment. A man who can contain his emotions without suppressing them becomes rare. He feels everything, but he expresses only what aligns with his principles. He does not erupt. He does not collapse. He does not spill his inner world into the hands of someone who has not earned it. Women notice this instantly. They feel it in the way he listens, in the way he pauses before speaking, in the way he refuses to be rushed by emotion. It gives them something to respond to, something to respect, something to desire. And here is the deeper truth. When a woman senses that a man does not need her to feel complete, it changes the dynamic entirely. Not because he withholds affection, but because he possesses himself. His life does not shrink to accommodate her. His direction does not bend to win her approval. His identity does not dissolve in exchange for closeness. He has a world of his own, and she must rise to meet it. That independence becomes leverage, not a weapon, but a force of nature. It transforms the way he communicates, the way he sets boundaries, the way he moves through connection. Female psychology responds to value, and value does not chase, it attracts. A man who is self-sourced becomes a mirror that reflects her own emotional uncertainty. She leans toward him to feel steadiness. She reaches for him to feel anchored. She invests because she feels something she cannot generate alone. That is the essence of emotional magnetism. It does not demand attention. It commands it quietly. Unpredictability plays a role here, but not the immature kind. It does not mean inconsistency of character. It means unpredictability of rhythm. Routine kills mystery. When she can predict your every move, emotional novelty dies. But when a man has a life filled with purpose, solitude, ambition, discipline, and self-directed momentum, his energy naturally shifts. Sometimes he's deeply present. Sometimes he's focused on his craft. Sometimes he's reflective, internal, and silent. This range keeps her in a state of emotional movement, and movement is what forms attachment. Obsession is not built through constant interaction. It is built through contrast. Moments of warmth followed by moments of space. Moments of connection followed by moments of focus. These oscillations create an emotional imprint. You become the rhythm she feels beneath her thoughts. She can't anticipate you. She can't replicate you. And because she can't replace you, you remain in her mind long after the moment ends. A powerful practice for deepening this inner shift is simple, but revealing. Monitor your reactions. Don't suppress them. Observe them. Notice the exact moment you feel compelled to explain, justify, pursue, or prove. Notice when you feel the urge to fill silence, rush an answer, or chase reassurance, and in that moment pause. Breathe. Speak half as much. Move slower. Let the discomfort stretch. This rewires the nervous system. It transforms insecurity into grounded presence. It changes the way you inhabit your own body. And when that happens, others feel the difference immediately. Suddenly, people listen more. Women look longer. Your presence expands into the room without effort. You stop seeking permission to exist. You stop apologizing for taking up space. You begin to feel your own solidity. Not because someone praised you, but because you stopped giving your power away. This is the essence of male confidence. Not performative bravado, not loudness, not posturing. True confidence is quiet, it is steady, it is self-contained. A man who carries this kind of confidence doesn't need to declare it. It is seen in his restraint. It is heard in his silence. It is felt in his composure. And here is the final revelation. This journey is not about women. It never was. Women are simply the mirror that reveals a man's relationship with himself. The goal is not to manipulate attraction or engineer desire. The goal is to become the kind of man who naturally evokes attraction by being whole. A man who doesn't chase because he is already full. A man who doesn't beg because he has dignity. A man who doesn't cling because he has purpose. A man who doesn't fear loss because he does not lose himself. When a man reaches this state, something liberating happens. He stops caring whether she stays or leaves, not out of coldness, but out of self-respect. He realizes that his value does not fluctuate based on the presence of a woman. He realizes that connection cannot be taken from him because it resides within him. He realizes that he is no longer seeking to be chosen because he has already chosen himself. And that is the moment women feel the deepest pull, because a man who belongs to himself becomes a man they want to follow. A man who is centered becomes a man they feel safe with. A man who is rare becomes a man they remember. That is not just attraction. That is freedom, and once you taste it, there is no going back.